The bricks were glazed blue, but how was it possible for such an unusual technique to be developed 2,500 years ago? A chemist, Stefan Fitz, submitted tile fragments from Babylon to spectrum analysis and solved the mystery. Together with ceramic specialist Andreas Fritscher, he uncovered the complex technical process involved. The initial step was very important, as a precise mix of sand and soda derived from vegetable ash had to be followed. The mixture was then fired to create a type of glass that was then used as the basis for the glaze. Today, a computer-controlled kiln is used to achieve the exact temperature of 950 degrees centigrade that is required. How the Babylonians measured and maintained this constant temperature remains a mystery. The glass was then ground into a fine powder for the next stage of the procedure. Tiny quantities of cobalt and copper oxide were added to the powder. The combination of the chemicals produced the distinctive brilliant blue color. But how could the ancient Babylonians have measured such extremely precise quantities of the minerals? Scientists today can only achieve the desired result by using pharmaceutical scales that are accurate to a milligram. Dr. Stefan Fitz then added distilled water to turn the powder into a creamy liquid, which is the finished glaze.
What the Babylonians achieved in constructing their buildings and decorating them was an enormous technological feat, and that also applies to the glazing they used. It wasn't just the fact that they produced this glaze. You also have to remember that many of the ingredients weren't readily available in that country at the time. So a great deal had to be imported from countries that were at the other ends of the earth in contemporary terms. The enormity of what they accomplished cannot be overemphasized.
The glaze was then painted onto the brick. Finally, the object was fired again, this time for 12 hours at a constant temperature of over 1,000 degrees centigrade. The Babylonians were apparently masters of this brick glazing process, and on a huge scale. The Ishtar Gate alone was clad in over 20,000 outer bricks. This gave it a brilliant blue sheen, a reflection of the sky above. The road before and after the gate was the Road of the Gods, the processional way, where the great New Year's festival was celebrated. This is known from the inscription stamped on the bricks, which read, "For the gods Marduk and Nabu, I cement the interior of the road with asphalt and fired bricks, and over this I place a powerful layer of glazing dust. May you gods be content as you wander along this way." Nebuchadnezzar had this message stamped on thousands of the tiles used. The Tower of Babel, the Ishtar Gate, and the processional way were all works of devotion to the gods. They were people's prayers immortalized in stone, and the laying of every foundation stone was also a precise ritual. All the foods that provided nourishment for life, oil, milk, beer, and dates, took on deep religious significance when the king and priests prepared the ground for a building in the sight of the gods. The ancient clay tablets mentioned the complex rituals and described them in great detail. Cream, honey, and beer had to be poured over the first foundation stone as a valuable offering for the gods. Clay-fired statuettes, envoys of the gods, were placed on the sacred stone, each of them holding a metal shaft in its hand as a symbol of divine power. A sacrificial sheep was prepared with its mouth washed out with fragrant juniper extract to encourage the gods to look favorably upon the offering. White, purified flour, the sacred fruit of the soil, was then sprinkled over the statuettes. This ensured that growth and prosperity would surround the building to be constructed. Then the statuettes were buried in the ground, the place that would soon bear the weight of the new structure. Long after the building itself has collapsed, the statuettes used in the ceremony survive to this day. Herodotus also wrote about certain rituals, but the Greek historian apparently failed to understand their significance. Though it was so long ago, the magical culture of Babylon had collapsed in ruins many years before he journeyed to the city. What remained, however, was a deep admiration for the buildings that still stood, such as the city walls. Herodotus must have fallen under their spell, as experts now believe that the measurements he supplied were wildly exaggerated. Scientists are now adopting new methods to test their theory. In this laboratory, the seventh wonder of the world is recreated, the walls of Babylon, on a scale of 1 to 100. Laser cutters make it possible to punch out holes 1,000 at a time and precisely trace the surface profile of the tiled brick walls connecting them. Never before has Babylon been recreated with the help of such modern technology. But this pioneering work is not merely being performed to produce a decorative model. It's an example of experimental archaeology, and the resulting model shows immediately that the data provided by Herodotus were not correct. When the proportions he provided are employed in the construction of the model, the number of battlements, for instance, doesn't match the length of each wall as stated. The city walls didn't stretch for 96 kilometers, as Herodotus said, but only for about 19, and apart from the major structures, the brick houses of the metropolis were only 1 or 2 stories high. The experiment with the model illustrates that the streets followed a ground plan that cut through the houses almost at right angles. Babylon was constructed as a gigantic fortress. There was a 12-meter-high double wall surrounding the entire urban area. Professor Prommer and model maker Bernd Kammermeier are convinced that with the military technology available at the time, the city would have been invincible. The Babylonians, in their modest houses, would have had a feeling of absolute security and an equally powerful sense of pride in their city. The camera shows the sense of awe that the ancient city dwellers must have had for the environment that dominated their everyday lives.